Story 1. I've been living in my house for about 8 years now. It's a quiet neighborhood where everyone pretty much minds their own business. I work as an accountant and spend most of my free time tending to my small vegetable garden in the backyard. Nothing too exciting, but I like the peace and quiet. The house next to mine was empty for almost 2 years after the previous owner moved to Florida. Then about 6 months ago, this woman moved in. At first, she seemed normal enough. We exchanged polite waves when we saw each other getting mail or taking out trash. I even helped her carry some heavy boxes when she was moving in. The shared fence between our properties is old but sturdy. It's made of wood and painted a neutral beige color that blends nicely with both our houses. The fence sits right on the property line, so technically we both own half of it. This becomes important later. Everything was fine until last month. I was getting ready for work one Tuesday morning when I looked out my kitchen window and nearly choked on my coffee. Half of our shared fence was now bright hot pink. Not a subtle pink or a nice coral color. I'm talking about the kind of hot pink that hurts your eyes to look at directly. I thought maybe I was seeing things, so I went outside to get a better look. Sure enough, my neighbor had painted her entire side of the fence this blinding hot pink color. It looked like someone had dumped a bucket of flamingo-colored paint all over it. I walked over to her house and knocked on the door. She answered wearing paint-stained clothes and had pink streaks in her hair. Hi there. I noticed you painted the fence. Karen, oh yes, isn't it gorgeous? I've been wanting to add some color to my yard. Well, the thing is, that's a shared fence. You should have asked me first before painting it. Karen, excuse me. I painted my side of the fence. I can do whatever I want with my property. But it affects my property too. Now, when I look out my windows, all I see is this bright pink fence. Karen, that's not my problem. I have every right to express myself however I want on my own property. I tried to stay calm and explain that shared fences usually require both neighbors to agree on changes, but she just crossed her arms and got more defensive. Karen, look, I spent my own money on this paint, and I'm not changing it. If you don't like it, that's your issue to deal with. She slammed the door in my face. I spent the rest of the day trying to figure out what to do. The pink was so bright it was actually giving me headaches when I sat in my backyard. I called the city's code enforcement office to ask about the rules for shared fences. The person on the phone was helpful. They explained that in our city, any modifications to shared property boundaries, including fences, require agreement from both parties. They said they'd send someone out to take a look. 2 days later, a code enforcement officer came by. He was a middle-aged guy who seemed like he'd dealt with neighborhood disputes before. Officer, I can see why you called this in. That's definitely not a typical fence color for this area. He took photos and measurements, then went to talk to my neighbor. I watched from my window as she came outside and started gesturing wildly. I couldn't hear everything, but her voice kept getting louder. The officer came back to me afterwards. Officer, she's claiming it's her right to paint her side however she wants. But according to city code, shared fences are considered joint property. She needed your permission before making changes. So what happens now? Officer, I'm issuing her a violation notice. She has 14 days to either get your written permission to keep the pink paint, or she needs to repaint it to a neutral color. I felt relieved that there were actually rules about this kind of thing. The next morning, my neighbor was at my door again. But instead of apologizing, she was even angrier. Karen, you called the city on me? Are you kidding me right now? I tried to talk to you about it first. You wouldn't listen. Karen, this is harassment. I'm going to report you for harassment. All I want is for you to paint the fence back to a normal color. It's not that complicated. Karen, I'm not repainting anything. This is America, and I have rights. She stormed off, and I thought that would be the end of it. But I was wrong. Over the next week, she tried everything she could think of. She called the city to complain about the code enforcement officer. She put up signs in her yard about property rights and artistic freedom. She even tried to get other neighbors to sign a petition supporting her right to have a hot pink fence. Nobody signed it. The 14-day deadline came and went. The fence was still hot pink. 2 days later, the code enforcement officer was back, this time with a citation that included a fine. Officer, the violation is now $200, and it increases by $50 every day until she fixes it. That got her attention. She came over that evening, looking defeated. Karen, fine. I'll repaint the stupid fence. But I want you to know this is completely unfair. Me, I never wanted it to become such a big deal. I just wanted us to discuss it first. Karen, whatever. What color do you want? Me, the same beige it was before would be fine. She spent the entire next weekend repainting the fence back to its original color. I have to admit, I felt a little bad watching her scrape off all that pink paint, but she had brought it on herself. The best part came a few days later. Another neighbor stopped by while I was checking my mail. Neighbor, hey, I heard about the fence situation. Just wanted you to know that pink was driving me crazy too. I was about to call the city myself. Turns out, half the street was annoyed by the bright pink fence, but didn't want to get involved. My neighbor's artistic expression had been bothering a lot more people than just me. The fence is back to its normal beige color now, and the neighborhood looks peaceful again. My neighbor and I don't really talk anymore, which is probably for the best. She did learn an expensive lesson about checking with people before making changes to shared property. The whole thing cost her about $400 in paint and fines, plus a weekend of scraping and repainting. I still tend my vegetable garden and enjoy my quiet backyard, now without any eye-searing pink distractions. Story 2. I've been working at this accounting firm for about 3 years now. It's a decent job, nothing fancy, but it pays the bills and my coworkers are mostly nice people. Well, most of them anyway. I should probably explain my situation first. I have fibromyalgia, which is an invisible disability that causes chronic pain and fatigue. Some days are better than others, but on bad days, even simple tasks can be exhausting. My doctor recommended I take short breaks throughout the day to help manage my symptoms, and my manager was really understanding about it. Human Resources documented everything properly, and I have all the accommodations I need under the Americans with Disabilities Act. The thing about invisible disabilities is that people can't see them. I don't use a wheelchair or crutches, so I look perfectly healthy from the outside. Most days I can hide the pain pretty well because I've gotten good at it over the years. But apparently, that was a problem for one particular coworker. Karen had been with the company for about 5 years and thought that gave her some kind of authority over everyone else. She was the type of person who always had something to say about everything, and it was rarely pleasant. I tried to stay out of her way, but our desks were in the same area, so avoiding her completely wasn't possible. It started small. I'd get up to take one of my prescribed breaks, and I'd catch her rolling her eyes or making faces. Then she started making little comments under her breath. Karen, some people have it so easy around here. I ignored it at first, hoping she'd get bored and move on to bothering someone else. But Karen wasn't the type to let things go. The comments got louder and more frequent. Whenever I'd get up to stretch or take a short walk around the building, she'd make sure everyone could hear her. Karen, must be nice to get paid vacation time every hour. Karen, I wish I could just walk around whenever I felt like it. Karen, some people really know how to work the system. My other coworkers started noticing. A few of them knew about my condition because I'd mentioned it in casual conversation, but others didn't. I could see them looking confused, probably wondering what Karen was talking about. One day, about 2 months ago, things came to a head. I was having a particularly rough morning. The pain was worse than usual, and I was feeling pretty exhausted even though the day had just started. I decided to take a quick break and went to the break room to sit down for a few minutes. Karen followed me. Karen, I've been watching you for months now. Me, excuse me. Karen, all these little breaks you take. Walking around, sitting in here doing nothing. Do you think we're all stupid? Me, I don't know what you're talking about. Karen, oh please. You're obviously faking whatever this is. You look perfectly fine to me. I've seen you carry heavy boxes. I've seen you run to catch the elevator. But somehow you need special treatment. Me, I have a medical condition that's been documented with human resources. My breaks are approved accommodations. Karen, right, your mysterious condition that nobody can see. How convenient. You know what I think? I think you're just lazy and found a way to get out of doing real work. She was getting louder, and I could see other people in the hallway starting to look our way. I felt my face getting hot with embarrassment and anger. Karen, people like you make me sick. Taking advantage of real disabilities to slack off. There are people out there with actual problems, and you're here pretending to be sick for attention. Me, you don't know anything about my medical situation. Karen, I know enough. I know you're a faker and a liar, and I'm tired of watching you get special treatment while the rest of us do actual work. That's when our supervisor walked by and heard the commotion. Supervisor, is everything okay here? Karen, I was just pointing out that some people around here seem to think they deserve special privileges. Me, she's been harassing me about my medical accommodations. Supervisor, Karen, can I see you in my office, please? Karen, this is ridiculous. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking. The supervisor looked uncomfortable and glanced at me apologetically before leading Karen away. I sat there shaking, partly from anger and partly because confrontation always makes my symptoms worse. I knew I had to report this officially. It wasn't the first time Karen had made comments, and I was tired of feeling uncomfortable at my own workplace. I went straight to Human Resources and filed a formal complaint. The Human Resources representative was very professional and took detailed notes of everything. They said they'd investigate thoroughly and get back to me within a week. Human Resources representative, we take these matters very seriously. No employee should feel harassed or discriminated against because of their medical conditions. True to their word, Human Resources completed their investigation within 5 business days. They interviewed several coworkers who had witnessed Karen's behavior, and apparently she didn't deny making the comments when they confronted her about it. Karen was called into a meeting with Human Resources and our supervisor. From what I heard through the grapevine, she was given 2 choices: complete mandatory sensitivity training about disabilities and workplace harassment, or be terminated immediately. I thought that would be the end of it. The training seemed like a reasonable solution, and maybe Karen would finally understand why her behavior was wrong. But Karen had other plans. The next morning, I came into work to find out that Karen had quit. She'd sent an email to our supervisor late the night before, saying she refused to be forced into ridiculous training for telling the truth. I figured that was that. Problem solved, right? Wrong. About a week later, one of my coworkers showed me Karen's Facebook post. She'd written this long rant about how she'd been forced out of her job for speaking up about workplace fraud. She claimed I was faking my disability to get special treatment and that the company was too scared of lawsuits to do anything about it. Karen's Facebook post, "Can't believe I lost my job for telling the truth about a coworker who's obviously faking a disability for attention. This company would rather protect lazy employees than hardworking ones. So disappointed in how backwards everything is these days." I was mortified. Even though she didn't use my name, anyone who knew us both could figure out who she was talking about. I worried that people would believe her version of events. But here's where the story gets satisfying. The comments on her post were not what she was expecting. Instead of sympathy and support, person after person called her out. One comment: "This sounds like workplace harassment. Maybe you should have minded your own business." Another comment: "You do realize invisible disabilities are real, right? Just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there." Someone else wrote, "I can't believe you're publicly complaining about getting in trouble for making fun of someone's medical condition. That's awful. Even her own family members were disagreeing with her in the comments. Her sister wrote, "I'm disappointed in you. This isn't the person I thought you were." Her mother commented, "You need to think about how your words affect other people before you speak." The post kept getting more negative responses throughout the day. People were sharing articles about invisible disabilities, explaining why her behavior was wrong, and generally not giving her the validation she was looking for. By the end of the week, Karen had deleted the post entirely, but screenshots had already been taken and shared, so the damage to her reputation was done. A few months later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Karen was having trouble finding new employment. Apparently, word had gotten around in our industry about why she'd left her previous job. Our field is smaller than people think, and hiring managers talk to each other. Meanwhile, I'm still working at the same company. My accommodations continue to be respected, and my coworkers are more supportive than ever. Several of them apologized for not speaking up sooner when they witnessed Karen's behavior. The whole experience taught me the importance of advocating for myself and not just hoping problems will go away on their own. It also showed me that most people are decent and understanding when they know the facts. Karen thought she could bully me into giving up my legitimate accommodations, but instead she ended up destroying her own career and reputation. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting entitled people face the natural consequences of their actions. Story 3. I moved to Sunset Hills 3 years ago after my divorce. I needed a fresh start somewhere quiet, and this suburban neighborhood seemed perfect. The houses were modest but well-maintained, the neighbors minded their own business, and the homeowners association fees were reasonable. I work from home as a freelance graphic designer, so I spend most of my time in my little house with my 2 cats. My neighbor across the street was always friendly. We'd wave when getting mail or taking out trash. The elderly couple next door brought me cookies when I first moved in. Everyone seemed normal until Karen moved into the corner house last spring. She appeared to be in her 50s, always dressed like she was heading to a country club meeting. Her husband looked exhausted whenever I saw him working in their perfectly manicured yard. Within a week of moving in, she was already walking around the neighborhood taking pictures of everyone's property. The notes started in June. I found the first one tucked into my mailbox on a Tuesday morning. The note was typed and printed on cream-colored paper. "Dear homeowner, your lawn chairs are an eyesore and detract from our neighborhood's property values. Please consider investing in more appropriate outdoor furniture. A concerned neighbor." I looked at my 2 plastic chairs on my small porch. They were clean, navy blue, and perfectly functional. I'd bought them at a discount store, but they weren't falling apart or anything. I crumpled up the note and threw it away. By Thursday, my neighbor across the street was knocking on my door. "Neighbor, hey, did you get one of those weird notes about your lawn chairs?" Me, "Yeah, yesterday." "You got one too." Neighbor, "Mine was about my garden gnome being inappropriate yard art. I've had that gnome for 15 years. My late wife bought it." Me, "That's awful. Who do you think is sending these?" Neighbor, "I have a pretty good idea." That weekend, I was watering my small flower bed when Karen approached me. She was carrying a clipboard and wearing a sun hat that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Karen, excuse me. I'm conducting a neighborhood improvement survey. I notice you haven't addressed the furniture situation on your porch." Me, "What furniture situation?" Karen, "Those unsightly plastic chairs. They're bringing down everyone's property values. I'm trying to organize the community to maintain certain standards." Me, "The homeowners association approved those chairs when I moved in. They're not violating any rules." Karen, "Well, the rules don't cover everything. Sometimes we need to use common sense about what's appropriate for a nice neighborhood like this." Me, "I think they're fine where they are." Karen, "I see. Well, I'll be speaking with the association board about updating our standards." She walked away, making notes on her clipboard. I had a sinking feeling this wasn't over. The notes escalated over the next few weeks. My neighbor with a garden gnome got another one calling his gnome disturbing to children. The young couple 2 houses down received a complaint about their unpatriotic house paint. Their house was painted a soft sage green, which looked lovely with their white trim. Karen targeted the retired teacher who had American flag wind chimes, claiming they were disrespectful to our nation's symbol. She left a note for the family with young kids, saying their sidewalk chalk art was defacing public walkways. I started documenting everything. Every note, every date, every interaction. My graphic design background made me good at organizing information, and something told me I'd need evidence. The breaking point came in August. I was having my morning coffee on my supposedly offensive lawn chairs when my phone rang. Elderly neighbor, are you seeing what's happening outside? I walked to my front window. Karen was going from mailbox to mailbox, systematically leaving notes. She had a whole stack of them. Me, she's hitting everyone today. Elderly neighbor, this has gone too far. Can you help me organize a meeting? I spent the afternoon calling everyone in our section of the neighborhood. By evening, 12 families had agreed to meet at the community center the next night. The meeting was packed. People brought their notes, and we laid them out on tables. The pattern was clear. Karen had targeted nearly every house with complaints ranging from inappropriate holiday decorations to excessive use of garden hose. Retired teacher, she told me my bird feeders attract pest animals and create a public nuisance. Young mother, she said our kids' bikes in the driveway were obstructing the visual flow of the street. Me, I've been documenting everything. We have dates, photos of the notes, and witnesses to her confrontational behavior. Elderly neighbor, what can we actually do about this? Me, the homeowners association has rules about harassment. If we file a formal complaint with evidence, they have to investigate. I spent the next week creating a comprehensive report. Photos of every note, a timeline of incidents, witness statements from affected residents. I designed it like a professional presentation because I wanted the board to take it seriously. The board meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. Karen showed up with her own folder of materials and sat in the front row. Board President, we're here to address complaints about harassment within the community. I presented our evidence methodically. The board members' expressions grew more serious as I explained the scope of Karen's note-writing campaign. Karen stood up during the public comment period. Karen, these people are trying to silence legitimate concerns about neighborhood standards. I have the right to express my opinions about property maintenance. Board member, ma'am, leaving unsolicited notes in mailboxes without identifying yourself could constitute harassment under our community guidelines. Karen, I'm trying to protect everyone's property values. Someone has to maintain standards around here. Board President, did you receive permission from the association before conducting this campaign? Karen, I shouldn't need permission to encourage good neighbors to take pride in their homes. Board member, actually, you do need permission for systematic community outreach, and you definitely need to identify yourself on any correspondence. The board voted unanimously to issue Karen a formal warning. If she continued leaving unsolicited notes, she would face fines starting at $500 per incident. Karen, this is ridiculous. You're all going to regret this when property values plummet. She stormed out, her husband trailing behind with an apologetic look. The notes stopped immediately. Karen still walks around the neighborhood taking pictures, but she keeps her opinions to herself now. My plastic lawn chairs are still on my porch, and my neighbor's garden gnome still guards his flower bed. Last week, I saw Karen's husband working in their yard while she wasn't home. He waved at me and smiled for the first time since they moved in. I waved back from my perfectly functional lawn chair. Story 4. I've been working at the Sunset Cinema for 3 years now. Started part-time during college to help pay for textbooks, and somehow ended up staying after graduation while I figure out my next move. It's not glamorous work cleaning theaters, refilling popcorn machines, dealing with sticky floors, and the occasional drunk customer. But the free movies and decent coworkers make it bearable. Last Friday was supposed to be a quiet night. We had the new superhero movie playing in our biggest theater, and it was the 9 p.m. showing. I was working the concession stand when this woman walked in. She looked like she was in her 40s, wearing an expensive-looking coat and carrying a designer purse. Right away, I could tell she was the type who thought the world revolved around her. She marched up to my counter and slammed her phone down. "Karen, I want a refund for this movie." Me, "I'm sorry, but did you already watch it? We usually don't give refunds after the show starts." Karen, "No, I haven't watched it yet. But I read spoilers online and I already know the ending is garbage. I want my money back now." I blinked at her, not sure I heard right. Me, "Ma'am, if you haven't seen the movie yet, maybe you should give it a chance. Sometimes the journey matters more than the destination." Karen, "Don't tell me what to do. I've been going to movies longer than you've been alive. This is terrible customer service." My manager wasn't around, so I explained that I couldn't process refunds without approval. She got even angrier and demanded to speak to someone in charge. When I told her the manager wouldn't be back for an hour, she stormed off toward the theater entrance. Me, "Ma'am, you still need a ticket to go in there." She just waved me off and kept walking. I called my coworker from the back to watch the counter while I followed her. The movie had already started about 20 minutes ago. The theater was pretty packed, maybe 60 or 70 people scattered throughout. I watched her march down the aisle and plop herself in a middle seat, right in the center section where she'd disturbed the most people. At first, she just sat there muttering to herself. I could hear complaints about the acting, the special effects, the plot. Other moviegoers started shushing her, but she ignored them. Then about an hour in, during what I knew was supposed to be a really emotional scene, she completely lost it. "Karen, this is such garbage. Why am I wasting my time with this trash?" The people around her turned to stare. A few people told her to be quiet. Random guy, "Hey lady, some of us are trying to watch the movie." Karen, "Well, you're all wasting your time because the main character dies at the end anyway, and his girlfriend leaves him for his best friend. The whole city gets destroyed and everyone's miserable." The entire theater erupted. People started yelling at her to shut up. Parents covered their kids' ears. I could see people pulling out their phones, probably to record what was happening. "Woman with kids, are you serious right now? You just ruined the whole movie for everyone." Karen, "Good. No one deserves a happy ending in this trash anyway. You should all thank me for saving you 2 hours of your lives." That's when I knew I had to act. I walked down the aisle toward her. Me, "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the theater immediately." Karen, "You can't kick me out. I paid for my ticket just like everyone else." Me, "Actually, you didn't pay for a ticket. You walked in here without buying one, and now you're disturbing other customers who did pay." She stood up and got right in my face. Karen, "I want to speak to your manager right now. This is discrimination. I'm going to sue this place." The whole theater was watching us now. Some people were still yelling at her. Others were asking for refunds since their movie experience was ruined. Me, "The manager isn't here, but I'm calling security and the police. You need to leave now." Karen, "Fine. This movie sucks anyway. The villain wins, the hero's mother dies in a car crash, and the post-credits scene sets up a sequel that nobody asked for." Even more people groaned and started shouting. She was spoiling every single plot point she could remember from whatever review she'd read online. Security showed up about 5 minutes later, 2 guys who work for the shopping center where our theater is located. By then, she was standing in the aisle yelling about how terrible modern movies were and how everyone in the theater had bad taste. Security guard, "Ma'am, you need to come with us." Karen, "I'm not going anywhere. I have rights." Security guard, "You have the right to leave voluntarily or be escorted out. Your choice." She finally left, but not before shouting a few more spoilers on her way out. The damage was done though. Half the theater got up and left to demand refunds. The other half stayed, but the mood was completely ruined. When my manager came back, I explained everything. We had to give refunds to about 30 people, which cost the theater hundreds of dollars. Worse, people were already posting about it on social media and leaving bad reviews online. The next day, my manager called me into the office. I thought I was in trouble, but it turned out several customers had specifically praised how I handled the situation. Even better, our corporate office had reviewed the security footage and decided to ban that woman from all their theater locations nationwide. Manager, she's officially trespassed from every theater in our chain. If she shows up here again, we call the police immediately. 2 weeks later, she tried to buy tickets online for a different movie. Our system flagged her credit card and blocked the purchase automatically. She called our customer service line screaming about it, but they just referred her to the legal department. I heard through a friend who works at the theater across town that she tried to sneak into a movie there too. They recognized her from the description we'd circulated and kicked her out before she even made it to the concession stand. The best part, that superhero movie turned out to be really good. I watched it during my break the next week, and none of the spoilers she yelled were even accurate. She'd apparently read some fake review online and believed every word of it. The real ending was completely different and actually pretty satisfying. Sometimes I wonder if she ever figured out she was wrong about the plot. Probably not. People like that never admit when they make mistakes. But at least she can't ruin anyone else's movie experience at our theater. And honestly, seeing her get exactly what she deserved made all the drama worth it. Story 5. I've been driving city buses for 12 years now. Started when my dad got sick and I needed steady work with good benefits to help pay his medical bills. The job taught me patience, but some days that patience gets tested more than others. This particular Tuesday morning was one of those days. It was the middle of winter, about 15 degrees outside with a wind that could cut through your coat like a knife. I was driving the Route 42 bus, which runs through the residential area on the north side of town. It's usually a quiet route, mostly elderly folks going to doctor appointments and a few people heading to work at the shopping center. I was approaching Maple Street when I saw her standing at the corner. Middle-aged woman in an expensive-looking coat, waving her arms frantically. This wasn't a designated bus stop, but sometimes people get confused, so I pulled over and opened the door. Morning. Ma'am, just so you know, this isn't an official stop. The nearest stop is 2 blocks down on Oak Street. Karen, I don't care about your stupid stops. I need you to drive me directly to my house. It's freezing out here and I shouldn't have to walk. She climbed on before I could say anything else. I could tell this was going to be one of those conversations. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I have to follow my designated route and only stop at approved bus stops. It's city policy and state law. Karen, that's ridiculous. I pay taxes that fund this bus system. I demand you take me to my house right now. I understand you're cold, ma'am, but I literally cannot legally stop the bus anywhere except at designated stops. I could lose my job and face fines. The Oak Street stop is really close to here. Karen, listen, driver boy, I don't think you understand who you're dealing with. My husband is a lawyer and my brother-in-law works for the mayor's office. I can have you fired with one phone call. I'd heard threats like this before. People think they can intimidate their way into getting what they want. But 12 years on this job taught me to stay calm and stick to the rules. Ma'am, I'm going to continue on my route to Oak Street. That's the next official stop where you can get off. I started driving toward Oak Street, which was literally a 3-minute trip from where we were. But Karen wasn't having it. Karen, no, I said, take me to my house. It's 147 Pine Street. Just turn left at the next corner. I cannot and will not do that. We're almost at Oak Street. That's when she completely lost it. She started screaming about how she was going to sue the city, sue me personally, and have my license revoked. Other passengers were staring, looking uncomfortable. An elderly man in the front seat shook his head and muttered something about entitled people. When we reached Oak Street, I opened the doors. "Me, this is Oak Street, ma'am. Your stop." "Karen, I'm not getting off. You're going to take me to my house, or I'm calling the police." "Me, actually, that's a good idea. Why don't you call them?" I thought this would end it. Most people back down when you agree to involve the police. But Karen was special. She actually pulled out her phone. "Karen, 911. Yes, I need to report a kidnapping. A bus driver is refusing to let me off at my house and is holding me against my will." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was literally lying to emergency services. I grabbed my radio and called dispatch. "Me, dispatch. This is bus 247. I need a supervisor and police assistance at Oak Street stop. I have a passenger refusing to exit and making false emergency calls." The dispatcher told me to stay put, and that help was coming. Karen was still on the phone with 911, spinning some elaborate story about being held hostage. The other passengers were getting restless, and I felt bad for them, but I couldn't move the bus with an uncooperative passenger making threats. After about 10 minutes, Karen finally hung up and got off the bus. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. She positioned herself directly in front of the bus, arms crossed, blocking my path. "Karen, I'm not moving until you agree to take me home." The other passengers started voicing their complaints. The elderly man had a doctor's appointment he was going to miss. A woman in the back said she'd be late for work. I felt terrible for them, but I couldn't run over Karen, obviously. "Me, ma'am, you're illegally blocking a public transit vehicle. Please move." "Karen, make me." 2 police officers arrived about 15 minutes later, followed by my supervisor. I watched through the windshield as they approached Karen. "Officer 1, ma'am, I need you to step away from the bus." "Karen, finally, officers, this bus driver kidnapped me and refused to take me to my house. I demand you arrest him immediately." "Officer 2, is that so? Sir, can you step down and explain what happened?" I got off the bus and calmly explained the situation. I told them about the illegal stop request, the threats, the false 911 call, and her blocking the bus. My supervisor backed up everything I said and showed the officers our route map and city ordinances about bus stops. "Officer 1, ma'am, we need to talk. First, making a false emergency call is a misdemeanor. Second, blocking public transportation is illegal. Third, bus drivers are required by law to only stop at designated locations." "Karen, that's impossible. I pay taxes. I have rights." "Officer 2, you do have rights, but you don't have the right to commandeer public transportation or block traffic." The officers spent another 10 minutes explaining the law to Karen, who kept insisting that her tax payments meant the bus was basically her personal vehicle. She demanded to speak to their supervisor, threatened to call the mayor, and claimed she was being discriminated against. Finally, Officer 1 had enough. "Officer 1, ma'am, you have 2 choices. Move away from the bus right now, or we're placing you under arrest for disorderly conduct and obstructing public transportation." "Karen, you can't arrest me. I know people. My husband will have your badges." "Officer 2, your husband can take that up with the judge. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." I watched in amazement as they actually arrested her. She screamed and struggled, making the spectacle even worse. The passengers on my bus started clapping when the police car pulled away. My supervisor told me I'd handled everything perfectly and that Karen's complaints would go nowhere since I'd followed all protocols. The elderly man with the doctor's appointment said he was going to write a letter to the city praising my professionalism. 3 weeks later, I found out Karen had been fined for the false emergency call and disorderly conduct. She also received a lifetime ban from the city bus system. Her husband, who turned out to be a real estate lawyer with no influence over municipal transportation, apparently wasn't too happy about the legal fees. The best part? Her house was exactly 4 houses down from the Oak Street stop. The walk would have taken her maybe 90 seconds.